Just
No,
hit the record.
perfect. You can get this in here.
Yes, it's great.
I'm like, no, I look gray.
Well, don't change your temperature.
I know. I'm trying. Oh, well, there you go.
Take your time. Take your time. Guys, welcome back to Once Upon a Movie, where we go beyond the screen, delving into the profound connections between movies and life. Today's a very special episode. It's the first episode of this Halloween season, and I have a very, very special guest. I'm so excited to have her, Gigi, aka Room for Scream. Gigi, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you coming on. I have been a fan of what you do since I came across you on TikTok. And
thank you.
at that time, I must say, you and I were pretty much sitting around the same followers. I think you were sitting at like 2,500 or something like that. And I just looked today. My God, this is just like, wow, it's absolutely insane. So congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you.
On the success so far. I mean, I'm just seeing you blow up, and I see you everywhere now. Like, I don't know if that's a good thing, but like, you're like
just
popping up
everybody.
Yes. Like, so really, I just want to start in the beginning. What got you into creating content about horror movies? And was this always something you saw yourself doing?
I think I always kind of wanted to put like some type of craft or like art out there. I just never really found my footing with what that was. I knew I was like a creative person, but didn't really know in which outlet. And I tried different outlets before. I don't really know if I thought of like, oh, I want to be like a content creator or something. A lot of people don't know, but my journey started on Twitch. I was like, I love horror. I love talking about horror. And I started a Twitch account, and I like kind of would talk about just spooky things, whether it was like creepy cases that were going on or like just weird, mysterious, like conspiracy theory type of stuff. And I kind of wanted a community where you could like do that live and like chat about it. And then we'd watch like, you know, just like horror shorts and just all this stuff. I built a nice community, but it was really hard to like grow that way. But it was something that would put so much time and effort. And I was like, okay, I really need to think like a content creator. Like, how can I start, you know, putting my stuff out there? Like, I feel like I know that I want to, like, I want my niche to be horror because that's really the only thing I know. And so I started to then like dive into TikTok. And at first, I didn't really take it seriously. I would post every now and then. And I look back at like my first videos and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cringy. Like, didn't even say the movie name that I'm reviewing. I'm like, oh, what? And then I kind of started to think of like, okay, if I want to take this further, kind of what can I do? Like, what's a really big thing that I could do? And I was like, I think I want to watch every horror movie that comes out in 2024, because I had this, as I was kind of finding my footing with what I wanted to do, I would just like scroll through and look up new horror movies that were coming out. And I don't really know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing, but I am an OCD girly. I am diagnosed with OCD. So one of the things that I would obsess about is like creating lists about what the new horror movies were. And so I kind of always wanted to keep up with like what the new ones were, because that's where you find like the hidden gems. And then, so that's where this like little journey was birthed, because I was like, well, I'm already like keeping a list of these new movies. I'm already looking them up. I may as well like, you know, have this letterboxd list, and I may as well watch them. I would put them out there like, oh, this is a new movie that came out, and people would be like, is it good? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't watch it. And so I was like, I want to be able to tell people if it was good or not. So I'm going to do it. I was like, I don't think it's going to be that hard. And then now I'm like 200 movies in, and I'm like, it's a little hard, but I'm still having fun with it.
Honestly, the task of you watching every single horror movie that comes out this year it gives me anxiety. I'm not gonna lie, because
No, same.
prior to having kids, I used to watch a movie every single night. And I realized in the last couple of years, between moving, I mean, I have moved 6 times in 5 years. And
oh my
yeah, we don't talk about it. My wife, on the other hand, she's moved 6 times in 6 years, and one was across continents. So that's even more. Yeah, it's even worse for her. After having kids, I have not been able to watch as many movies as I used to. I decided this year to try to make it an effort to watch a movie every single night. Not horror, but just a movie in general. Movies is a part of my life. I've grown up with movies, whether it's horror, whether it's it doesn't matter. It's just movies in general. They provide a comfort for me that, I looked for much younger, and it's always something that's been there for me.
Totally.
And I didn't even know what Letterboxd was. This is how out of touch I am with things. I was like,
No,
oh,
a lot of people don't know it. It honestly kind of blows my mind.
yeah. So I created my account, and that's where I keep track of it. It's not even for like people to go follow. It's just for me to like keep track of it. And now I can like hold myself accountable essentially. I'm doing my best, and it feels good because it's kind of rejuvenating in a sense. Like it's reminding me of like why I loved this in the first place. But to piggyback off what you're saying, like when you make it a task to watch these movies, do you lose a quality? Like, do you lose that connection essentially to the films because it's more so task oriented and you're having to get through it? And does it like, does it make you feel like, okay, I'm watching it to watch it, but not if like I'm not in the mood to watch a movie, that's usually hard for me to get into a film. Does that make sense?
No, I totally know what you mean. It happens every once in a while. And honestly, when it does happen, it's because I've had to watch like some not great films. Like, if I knew that like every release was going to be a banger, I feel like it really wouldn't be that like big of a task or feel like a task. And some days it does feel like a task. And so what I have been doing, because usually what I try to do is watch like a movie every day or like 2 a day, and sometimes that's just not feasible. It's like along with I still work. I don't have kids, but I feel like I run a zoo. I have like 4 animals. I have, I also just have a life where it's like I want to hang out with my friends, or I want to, decorate the house or get some chores done. And it's just not feasible that day. So I try to, if I know that I'm just not in the mood that day, I won't put something on, or I will go out of my way to like try to pick something that I know is going to be good, where I'm like, okay, I've heard buzz around this. Other people have watched this. It's something that I'm looking forward to. And if I'm not necessarily like in the mood, at least I know the movie's like good. And that can usually kind of suck me back into it. But if I'm like, no, if I'm just not feeling it that day, I won't force myself to, and I'll just save it for another day, because then there are days when I'm like totally in the mood. I'm like, I want to have a movie marathon, and I can fit in like 4 or 5 movies a day. And I'm like, okay. So that's kind of like how I've been treating it, because that's what I didn't want it to become, was then feel like a task. Because then it's just like, it does, like it takes the fun out of it. And then you're like, why am I doing this? Like, so luckily that hasn't happened yet. There have been movies though that I've watched where I'm like, why am I doing this? And I am not the kind of person, some people are, and I'm not the kind of person where if I start a movie, I don't usually turn it off. And like, if I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling it, especially with this challenge, I just feel like you're not giving the movie like a full chance if you don't watch the full thing. And I don't, knock people that do that, because I've totally done that in the past. But especially for this challenge, I'm like, if I'm going to rate and watch the movie, or if I'm going to, put a review out, I need to have seen the whole movie to give it, a fighting chance. Those are the moments where I'm like, even then it's like, it's kind of nice because it reminds you that there are really good movies. And, sometimes you got to like siphon through the bad ones to find like a really good one. There's just hidden gems everywhere. And so I don't know. There are days where it's a lot. And then there are days where I'm like, I love that I'm doing this.
More power to you, because I've seen some of the ones that you have seen, and they're hard watches. They are hard, and not because they're scary or gory, just because they're just horrible movies. So
yes, exactly.
I commend you, and if anybody else out there thinks they can do that, good luck to you. Where did you come up with the name Room for Scream?
Okay, it's really funny. A lot of people don't know this. Is when I used to do my Twitch channel, my little gimmick was that I used to have coffee for every single stream. And before like the stream would start, I would have this little segment where I would usually try to have like a different coffee, whether it was like I went and go buy it, or I would make it and try different flavors. And I would have like a first stream sip, because I just absolutely love coffee, and I drink way too much caffeine, as I'm drinking like a yerba mate right now. So I was like, I want to do something where I'm having coffee on my stream and it kind of has like a little play on words. And so I came up with the idea of like, oh, I like my coffee with room for scream. And so I would take my little first stream sip. And so every once in a while when I'm out in the wild, like I just ordered a coffee like yesterday, I ordered a cold brew and she's like, oh, do you want room for cream? And I was like, oh, that's where I got my name from.
That's actually very clever. Everything about you is extremely clever, and it's kind of obnoxious. I'm not gonna lie.
Thank you.
Most people just like randomly, it's like, I don't know, somebody like said it or it sounded cool, and you're actually like out here putting thought and effort into it. So thanks for making the rest of us feel bad.
I tried. I'm just kidding.
No. So when it comes to your content, how do you come up with the ideas? Is this driven by what you're personally passionate about, or do you base it off of what your audience is asking for, especially like for Twitch?
Well, okay, so typically I kind of do a mix of it, and I feel like a lot of people are like that, because if it starts to feel like something that you're only putting out content because that's what your audience is hoping to see from you, but it's not actually like something that you are passionate about or that you're even interested in, then it's like you're just dreading making some of the content. I try to think of like certain things that I'm like, okay, this is what I like to see, or like the things that I like to consume. And I kind of keep like a running list of like, you know, whether it's movies or lists or genres or just different topics that I would be interested in. I kind of keep a list of those, and that's how I try to make, you know, my content, whether it's on TikTok or on YouTube. I rarely do Twitch now. It's just kind of hard, because Twitch is hard because you have to sit there for like hours, and you're like, oh man, this is time that I, you know, need to be watching a movie, or, you know, I could be recording a video or something. So that's been on the back burner for a little while, but I do that, and you know, that's how I make some of my videos. But then sometimes I do try to like search up what's something that people have been really looking up, you know, whether that's like the creator search insights on TikTok, or whether that's like YouTube's little daily inspiration things. And if from there, if it's something that I'm interested in, then I'll make that kind of content. So it's still everything that I have an interest, or like something that I would want to put out. I guess it's just the time that it becomes, you know, relevant or popular. Like, for example, I love playing horror games, and I never really knew when to put that out, and it doesn't quite fit my niche. Like, even though it's horror, I only talk about horror movies, you know. It's not like I talk about like horror gaming or like horror media or, you know, whatnot, comics or something. With Alien Romulus that just came out, a lot of people were talking about it in comparison to the video game Alien Isolation, which is one of my favorite games. And so I was like, you know what, this is the perfect time that I can make a little video on horror movies that have to do with like, you know, horror games and vice versa. And so that's kind of how I base my little topics, where I'm like, okay, something I'm interested in, but it's still relevant at the time.
So I actually started on Twitch as well, and I did it full time. So I was actually
nice. It's hard.
It's extremely hard. And I did it for 2 years, fairly successful. I was making a good amount of money that I could do it full time and still be able to support, you know, wife, 2 kids and house and all that. And then I got banned. So,
oh my gosh, wait, how'd you get banned?
Well,
you don't have to say.
I'm a little bit outspoken, and all of the content that I did on Twitch had nothing to do with movies. I actually, it was straight up gaming. And then I decided to do a podcast with a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine. We're not the friendliest, you know, and it was called Trash Talk Tuesdays.
I love that.
Yeah, we talked about anything and everything. Anything goes. My audience, for the most part, was pretty accepting of everything. And we always had people on to like have different opinions on certain things and whatnot, because, you know, we always believe there's always 2 sides to a conversation, right? To anything. So everything was going great. And then I decided to do this thing with this one guy from overseas. We did this like collab, but his audience was very different than mine. And when they found out, like, and they saw some of the stuff that I did, they like went straight up like pitchfork, you know, like Frankenstein, like the monster, you know, and they just started reporting me, and I got banned. So that was the end of that.
And honestly, I have this like soft spot for the community that I've built, but Twitch it's not only hard, but it's really toxic. There were some days where I'd be like in the middle of a stream, and I was like sitting there like, I wish that I could just turn my computer off midstream, because it's like, whether it's a certain topic that gets brought up, or just, you know, community members or just random people. It's like, it's a lot to handle live, you know?
It is. And you have to have that personality. Like, I feel like you have to be able to just absorb it all in, know when to say something, when not to. Like,
Totally.
you can't just, you almost have to take your emotions out of it, because
Yes.
somebody may say something that is just like so out of pocket, but you can't show it. You can't be like, you know, whereas for me, like, I'm like, because I rage a lot when I play games, that was like my thing. That's what people love. They came to see me get pissed off. I had so many redemptions for people to like throw at me mid game. Like if I was playing Call of Duty, most toxic game ever, you're playing it, and mid game I had to unplug my remote and just watch it all go down, you know. Or there was a chicken song that I had, it was like a chicken rap, and one kid redeemed it 45 times straight, so it kept playing over everything. I couldn't hear audio, and it would cause me to just rage, and people love that. So it was like a give and take for the most part. But anyways, I digress. Let's just go back to this. Twitch days are over. I'm living glory days.
You're like, I'm pissed again.
Yeah. Oh, now I'm mad. I'm gonna rage right now. Okay, horror obviously is a very unique genre. Why do you think it connects with people so strongly, and what is it about horror that like really grabs you?
Yeah, it's so funny because people ask that like all the time, like, what do you like about horror? And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's just because it's something that you can use your imagination with so much. Like, I just feel like it gets your brain really locked in, really moving, because it's like with comedies, you don't have to use your brain a lot. Even with like dramas, you don't have to use your brain a lot because they're purposefully telling you this story that's unfolding. But with horror, it's like they're trying to keep a little secret from you, and it's trying to unfold. So you're just super, super engaged and able to just kind of use your creative mind, you know, and also have those like feelings arise, whether it's like being scared or like emotional, or just like, you know, also like mystery aspect, trying to figure out what's going on. I just think that it has so many emotions attached to it. So it's just so much of an immersive experience. And that's honestly why I love it. Like, I love the feeling of getting scared. I also love scaring other people. People absolutely hate that about me. If I can try to scare somebody, I will take that opportunity every single time. That's why I gravitate towards it. I love that feeling because it's just like, I don't know, it kind of reminds you that you're alive. You're like, this is so fun and thrilling.
I can't answer the question myself, but do you have a favorite horror movie that you just can't live without? Or do you have, like, for me, for example, I can't have a favorite. I cannot pick. I have like top 5 for sure. But I do not have a specific. Is there anything specific for you that's like, yes, I live by this?
Honestly, no. Like, that's another question that gets me. Like, when people are like, what's your favorite horror movie? I'm like, I don't know. And I feel like you have favorites at the time, like, you know. And so if people ask me what my favorite, because I have a favorite movie of all time, and that's Jurassic Park. I love that movie. I'm like, bury me with my copies of it because it's very nostalgic for me, and like, I just love the movie itself, but it has a nostalgia aspect. Like, I grew up watching it with like my brothers and my dad, and we had these little Jurassic Park tents and everything. So that's the movie that I'm like forever number one, will always remain on my Letterboxd top 4. Nothing will ever top that. But when it comes to, and some people, you know, consider it horror because it's like sci-fi horror, but it just feels like something that you watched as a kid, you know? So when people ask me what's my favorite horror movie, I don't know. And it kind of like just changes from the mood that I'm based on, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, I really love The Exorcist because that's another like nostalgic horror movie for me, and it doesn't scare me, but it's just the horror movie that I've seen the most, and it has this nostalgia aspect for it, and it's also just kind of, you know, this classic, and I love the way that it looks. I have my little Exorcist shirt on right now.
Nice.
But then other times I'm in a mood where I'm like, no, that's not my favorite horror movie. I really am into the early 2000s right now. So The Descent is my favorite horror movie. Like, it just kind of changes. I feel like you go through these seasons where you're like, this is the one. But yeah, I couldn't just pick one. That's so hard.
The Descent's actually a top 5 for me.
100%.
It's one that, like, when I think of like just movies that I tend to love in general, and I'll stick to horror for this, but they're just ones that for some reason they just stay with me. Like they
Yes.
just did something, whether it was at the time, like you said, like that's the beauty about film. And that's really kind of why I started this podcast to begin with, because I always associate movies the way some people associate a smell in a place, right? Like
Yeah.
you ever get a whiff of a very specific smell and it reminds you, takes you back to a place in time where
Oh, yeah.
it just, that's what movies do for me.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Jurassic Park. My very first episode that I did on this podcast, I talk about Jurassic Park. I'm not going to talk about it now because I don't want to cry in front of you because we just met. That'd be kind of weird. But Jurassic Park has a very special place in my heart for very specific reasons. And that's a movie that I'm already feeling it. So we're just going to move on from that. But if you guys want to see it, it's on the very first episode. So yes, I understand completely what you mean about just like in the mood too, because a lot of times I love early 2000s movies. Sometimes I forget about them altogether because I'm seeing something new, but then I'm going through my collection. I have a lot of movies and I just remember, I'm like, oh damn, I really love The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Like,
Yes.
why do I not talk about that more often?
Yes.
And I'm like, it's just one of those things. So I totally get it. I respect your answer. She doesn't have a favorite, guys. All right, calm down. So content creation on TikTok or anywhere else in general is extremely tricky. Obviously, there's the algorithm we worry about, trends. What are some of the big challenges that you've faced while growing your following, and how do you balance your creativity with all of the platform's demands?
I guess the biggest challenge is honestly just burnout. Like there are some days where I don't feel like putting out a video, where I'm just like, I don't, kind of just like how you feel like not watching a movie. You're like, I don't feel like watching a movie. I don't have the attention span to watch a movie. I don't feel like, creating a video. I don't want to sit in front of a camera right now. I also don't really feel like I have the brain power to say what I want to say and make it sound the way I want it to sound. But then you get in your head about it where you're like, well, if I don't post content, then I'm not relevant, or like that could be the content or the video that hits like 1 million, or, or like, how am I going to continue to grow if I'm having these lazy days? And I've been trying to be better at that because it's like, well, I kind of live by a motto this year of it's not that serious. That's my motto. Anytime something happens, I'm like, it's not that serious. So I try to just give myself some slack where I'm like, it's one day, you're still there. You still grew the amount of followers that you did. And if this is the video that was supposed to take off, it's going to happen inevitably, whether you put it out tonight or tomorrow, it's going to happen, whenever you do it. So that's been that's the struggle. In the beginning, it used to be hard, like with comments and just people being just keyboard warriors and everything. Honestly, though, I will say that the internet has made me a lot stronger. I definitely used to be more of like a people pleaser and just not reserved, because I'm a very outgoing person, but where I would take those things just a little bit more personally. And now, I mean, people say some of the most heinous things, if for some reason your video goes viral, and that has kind of come to a point where I'm just like, I am able to let that like roll off my back, and I don't really give it any power. And I have learned how to kind of stand up for myself, or just, I don't know, just be kind of professional about it. So that's a challenge that you have to deal with in the beginning, but I do feel like it makes you stronger, but doesn't mean it's okay. So people don't comment mean things.
At the end of the day, there's always somebody that's going to say something. You cannot please everybody.
Exactly.
And especially when you are, in something that you're more and more popular, like you're getting known more, like your videos are being shared a lot more, you're getting higher views, your follower count is growing. Obviously you're doing something right. So does it really matter at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. That's kind of like, I'm so proud of like the growth that I made, and I never want to be like somebody that's like, rub it in people's faces. But every once in a while I do flaunt it when like people, like I'll get some comments that are like, you're dumb and your opinion doesn't matter. And then I'm like, well, I'm like, my almost 50,000 followers will disagree.
Nice.
And I'm like, you know what? I don't like to flaunt, but every once in a while it feels good, if somebody's going to be a jerk in my comments.
It's one way to handle it. It's nothing wrong with that. So I'm curious about how, you talk about you're almost at 50,000. Like I said, when I first met you, wasn't that long ago. Okay. So you can brag about this all you want. You had like 2,500 and you basically just left all of us in the dust. How has this success changed things for you? Like, what's been the most unexpected or surprising part of becoming notable creator, especially on TikTok?
Honestly, I feel like it's just having different relationships now with certain like people in the movie industry, people that I really respect and like look up to that I never thought like I would have any kind of relationship with, and just being given opportunities, whether that's like, oh, you know, certain PR packages or certain like some of my favorite distribution companies, like for example, like Dark Sky Films. I am like buddies with the people in Dark Sky Films. Like we're constantly DMing each other and like things like that where I'm like, wow, these are like movies that I love and like companies that I really look forward to their movies like being released and stuff, and they are wanting to have like, you know, a personal relationship with me, and just, you know, being able to have like certain relationships with like directors or actors that I really look up to. For example, me and the director of like Ready or Not, which is one of my favorite movies, like the reboot of the Scream movies.
Okay, now
Abigail,
you're really
yeah.
bragging.
Yeah, I know, right? He follows me and he like liked one of my stories the other day, and I was like, oh my, I was like, are we friends?
I'm giddy for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's like things like that where I'm like, oh, this is so exciting that not only I don't feel like these people see me as, I feel like sometimes influencer has like a certain like connotation to it, but I'm like, oh, they actually like respect my opinion as not just like, oh, a content creator, but like a critic or like, you know, a reviewer or a journalist or whatever, you know, people want to call it at the time. It's like, oh, that means a lot to me. So I think that's like the things that are like super wild to me.
That's amazing. I mean, just, I remember for me, when I first got a DM from a company that's like, hey, do you want to review this movie if we send it out to you? I was like, oh my God, yes. Like, I don't have to buy something for once in my life, you know? Like,
yes.
I thought I made it. I called my mom. I was like, I made it, Mom. Like, this is it. I'm hit it the big time. So that's success to me. I can't even imagine like what you're going through. It's incredible. Congratulations. I don't think I've said it enough.
Thank you. But that's really big though. Honestly, I still remember that, like that feeling, and it really still hits me. Like I get emails like, you know, about movies and stuff like that, and it still feels like me. I'm like, oh, yeah. You want me to review your movie? I'm like, how sweet.
Yeah. Especially like, I mean, I'm a movie collector. I have, you know, I don't have the biggest collection, but I got a pretty decent size. I have a little over 3,500 like actual physical, you know,
Jesus.
copies of things. This room, the wall behind me, that blur is an entire wall that's 12 feet, you know, high. It's a custom bookshelf with, you know, all sorts of movies, VHS. I'm a huge collector of VHS. That was something that I loved about you, that you had VHS. I was like, at first I was like, is she just doing it because it's trendy, or is she for real? Like I had to be a little bit skeptical. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna just 100%. Be like, no, yeah, she knows her stuff. Like, you know, some people just do it because it's a trend, and I'm like, they don't even open them, or they don't even know how to play them. They don't have anything. They're just like, this is really nice aesthetically, so I'm just gonna keep it here. But anyways, so I mean, I collect. So when these companies reach out to me and they go, hey, we have this movie for you, like, do you want it? Can you do an unboxing for us? I'm like, oh my God, yes. Like, I spend, not to brag, but hundreds and hundreds of dollars a week. My pre-orders alone, just today, I pre-ordered 3 new things from Shout Factory, and it was $300. And that's Hush? It was the collector's edition of Hush. Yes, absolutely. With the 2 posters, the signed poster from Mike Flanagan. Like, I know. Oh my God. I can totally be like, he sent this to me, but he didn't. But we're going to pretend he did.
Oh yeah. So we'll edit this out.
and like, that's like on top of the other existing order that I have with them. And I'm like, my God. So when I get even one, it's so nice. It's so nice to my pockets. My kids can eat, you know. So I appreciate it, guys, because that's the reality of that.
No, seriously, that I feel the same way, because it's like with doing this challenge, it's like I don't even look, honestly. Like I don't look back. I'm like, if I press buy, that is not my business. I'm like, maybe I can write this off, but I have spent a lot of money on these new releases, whether that's going to the movies or like renting them on video on demand and stuff. And so when I get something, when they're like, oh, hey, we'll send you a screener, I'm like, one, thank you for even just, you know, taking me seriously as like a you know, a content creator or somebody that you would want me to, you know, put a review out. But 2, I'm like, thank you. Now I don't have to spend like the $7.99, because that adds up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I know we talked about before, like, you know, the negativity in terms of like comments and keyboard wars and that sort of thing. Obviously, the people that I follow, I don't just like hit follow because they hit follow back. Like, I interact, I engage with the content. And, I've noticed with your audience, everybody seems pretty engaged, whether it's positive or negative. When it comes to that, like, how do you handle that interaction? And let's put aside because we already talked about the negatives, but like, how do you handle the interactions with like all the positives? And do you enjoy that back and forth when it comes to like horror films and just the debating or just talking about, or does it ever get overwhelming?
Honestly, that's a really good question because I don't think that people talk about that enough. There are days when I do feel really overwhelmed as like a content creator where you are putting out content and you want to have like an open discussion with people, but you also have like so many platforms that you're doing, if it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all these different things. It's really hard to keep up with all these discussions on all of these apps. And like, I have had days where it's like, I just don't have the mental capacity to like respond to my comments. And I'm like, oh my God, people probably think I'm like so mean or I'm like too good for them or something. Cause I'm like, I just have, had a really bad day at work and I don't have the, brain power to actually respond to comments right now. And so it is really overwhelming sometimes when it's like a lot, or when you get like a video that I had my long legs video, it's almost at like 4 million views and I don't even check that video anymore. I'm like, this is to a point where you just can't, like, there's like certain comments, and then sometimes the comments will just like become the same type of, comment and stuff. So you're like, oh, well, I can't respond to the same thing 1,000 times, even if it's just a video that, doesn't do even that great or mildly does good. It's like having to have a constant discourse in your life while you're also just trying to like exist and be a human and pay bills or go to work or have me time or go out with your friends. It does sometimes feel like overwhelming. And then when it starts to feel overwhelming, then you kind of get this feeling of like, oh my God, am I ungrateful? Like I'm so happy that these people are, interacting with my content and engaging with it and, putting these comments on here and wanting to have like a discourse with me or like messaging me and stuff. But it's like this never ending like balance that you have to, find, I guess, just balance in. But I feel like I've gotten better at it, but I think everybody has those days where you're just like, I can't keep up. And honestly, I don't think anybody faults people on it. I don't even think anybody really even pays attention that much than you, because it's just, you're seeing it through your own eyes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've never had a video hit those numbers. I've had a few videos hit a couple 100,000. I had one in particular that hit like almost 700,000.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I have always prided myself on responding to everyone. Like that's when you're little, it doesn't, you can, right?
Yeah.
And I always feel like despite the comment, how simple it may be, like I'll always go out of my way to respond just because I want to have that interaction. I enjoy that. Like for me, like the ability to actually talk to people that are very like-minded is so refreshing, because in my personal life, I don't have that. My wife was not a movie person until she met me. And unfortunately it's either that or, divorce. So I'm just kidding. She just, it's not the same. I look forward to the conversations. And I remember when this video had hit, it was so overwhelming because there was a point where I was trying to keep up, and I actually ended up responding so quickly that I blocked myself for 3 days.
Oh no,
because
they think you're a bot.
They thought I was a bot. I'm like, no, I'm just that fast, bro. Like, come on, like, gosh. So
I'm just so good at engaging with my community.
You don't even know. So I'm going as fast as I can, and I felt so bad. And I just remember seeing all the comments, and then of course all the hidden comments, and trying to refresh those. It is overwhelming, and like you said, a lot of people don't talk about that. It's good to hear that other people feel the same, because it's not like you're actively trying to ignore anybody. It's just sometimes things get hard, and you just need to walk away from it. Speaking of TikTok, do you see yourself sticking with TikTok, especially with this whole talk still of a ban and that sort of things? Or do you have plans to branch out onto other platforms?
I feel like with things like Instagram, there's a consistency to it. It's like if I put out a video, sometimes they do like better than others, but usually it's very consistent and it shows it to my followers, and I have like really good engagement and everything. Same thing with YouTube, and YouTube is really good at like pushing out your videos to the algorithm that people actually will stop and watch it on. And like I remember my second video on YouTube, I literally had like maybe like 200 subscribers, and it was my second video that I put out, and it hit like 15,000 views. And I was like, oh my God. And people were like, that's literally insane. And it was just because it happened to be pushed out to people that enjoy other horror content, and just YouTube is really good at that, where like TikTok is not. It's like, even though you have a bunch of followers and stuff, it's like half the time the people that follow you don't even see your content, like, you know, or it like doesn't get pushed out to the algorithm. One video will and one video won't. And so it feels like you're constantly trying to play this game of winning over the algorithm on TikTok. And even though I'm so grateful for like the opportunities that it brought me, and it still brings me opportunities, and, you know, every once in a while when you have like a video do really well, it's like, oh, cool. If you're a part of the creator fund, then that's a nice little paycheck where it's like, oh, I took my time on this video and I paid for this movie, and oh, okay, I kind of saw some money back on it. Like, that's great. That's kind of why I've branched out. I put a lot of focus now into Instagram. I put a lot of focus now into YouTube. Even like Twitter, like I've started to just like use, or X, I'm sorry. And like I've started to use that because I also just want to be more accessible on other platforms, but you also just can't bank on one platform, because if that starts to not do so well, then you don't really have, you know, anywhere else that shows that you are a content creator. You know, you're an individual that is in this niche or this realm. So TikTok is an interesting one. It's probably, I don't know, it's like my favorite then my least favorite of them, because I love scrolling through TikTok and seeing all my friends and creators, and it's like brought me so many good things. But then every once in a while, it's just like, it can be so toxic and awful and just bring your mental health down when you're like, oh great, I just had a video hit like 100,000 views. Like, this just happened to me this week. I had a video like instantly hit like 100,000 views, and I was like, awesome. And then the next video I put out, it was like 1,000 views, and I was like, damn it.
Do you think that you would ever explore other genres? If you were to, would you incorporate it somehow? Would it find its way into the Room for Scream world, or do you think you would create a whole other channel for it?
Ooh, I feel like it would have to be another channel, because I feel like Room for Scream is it's so horror that I couldn't branch out, and it would feel like it would make sense to me. Also, just the name, where people would be like, oh, all of a sudden we're seeing like romantic comedies on here. We're like, what? If I did ever branch out though, it would probably have to be, honestly, it would probably have to be rom-coms or stand-up comedy. A lot of people don't know, I adore stand-up comedy. When I was thinking of doing either one of two things, like, not that I was like wanted to be a stand-up comedian, but I was like, maybe I'll put out content for people, like, you know, about stand-up comedy and like specials and different things, and like all these things that people don't really know about, because it's just this world that not a lot of people are into. And I was like, no, I'm gonna stick with horror. I know more about that. I feel like you could do so much more. But yeah, if that was my avenue, I feel like that'd be so random. But
What would you call your channel?
I know, I'm like, what would I, Room for Laughs? It would have to be like cheeky though. Like,
Yeah.
I would sit there for like days and think of something where I'd be like, oh, it's like a play on words, guys.
My wife and I, we go to stand-up comedy. It's like our date night thing. Like, we'll go to open mics.
Oh, fun.
It's always a thing where, like, I've always heard this. I heard this from Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx said that every singer wants to be a stand-up comedian, and every stand-up comedian wants to be a singer. And,
I believe it.
And I'm a musician. I started doing music long ago. I'm a singer. So I've always had this itch to do stand-up comedy. And I'm like slowly getting there. Like, I'm not funny at all, but I like to make people laugh.
You're
but
like, I laugh at myself.
You know, yeah. I mean, like, whatever. If I laugh at myself, somebody can laugh at me or with me. It doesn't matter. But
Oh my God,
I just
you so should do it.
I want to. I really do. And I'm like, I go to these stand-up, these open mics, and I'm like, man, how do I start? But then at the same time now, it's like, I love what I'm doing with this, and I don't want like stand-up comedy to like bite me in the ass, and then like this like ends up disappearing because I said something so out of pocket. And that's just me. Like, I know that I would get myself in trouble. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. This is what I do all the time. I'm the worst at this.
I love it.
I'm the absolute worst at this. We'll be talking about coffee in a little bit, because I can also tell you that I was born and raised in Costa Rica. We grew coffee, and I can tell you the proper way to make coffee. And if you have a coffee machine, you're not doing it right.
Oh yeah, I gotta
French
say,
press.
yeah.
French press.
I used to do French press for a long time, and and then I stopped and I was like using my Keurig or whatever. And then I got back into doing my French press, and I have not done it in a while because I just started getting on a kick of like only drinking iced coffee. And I have to get back into it because also I just got sent I'm gonna brag for a second again, but I just got sent. Shutter sent me like a PR package, and it came with coffee, and I was like,
Oh, that's
okay,
awesome.
yeah, I was like, this is my sign. I have to make my little French press, and like, you know, and especially it's like about to be fall, so I can make some nice, cute, hot coffee, pumpkin, you know, coffee. But yeah, French press, that is the way to go.
Just dropping names. My God. I'm glad I got you on this podcast before, like, I don't know, 3 months from now, we're going to see this girl on like E. She's just going to be like interviewing at the red carpet. I'm like, yeah, we did something once. It was fun.
Like, go back and watch my episode with her.
Like, just, she doesn't remember any of this. It doesn't matter.
Oh, please.
Anyways, obviously we talked about some like favorites of like horror, and you know, you mentioned you really don't have one, but are there any like horror films that have influenced you in some sort of way in your life, or are there any filmmakers or specific films that you look for in terms of like inspiration, just in general, like with life?
I have to say, I feel like I always bring Mike Flanagan up because there is like a certain atmosphere. Like, I love all horror movies, but I love most horror movies, but I love when people are able to capture this certain eerie, spooky atmosphere, because that feels very like Halloween and just true to horror. Because, like, you know, a lot of now that horror has evolved, we see so many movies like being labeled as like a horror genre, and you're like, oh well, this doesn't quite feel horror, you know, even though like, okay, I can see that it has like some horror elements and stuff. But Mike Flanagan has this certain essence to his movies where I'm like, it just brings me to this like rainy night, candles are lit, like this spooky, eerie feeling that you have as like a kid. And those are the type of movies that I really, really love because it just puts you in a certain atmosphere. And so I love work from Mike Flanagan. Kind of same thing with Guillermo del Toro. He kind of has that same atmosphere. He also has a really good like creature design. So I love that kind of stuff. And you know, it's really funny because I kind of just started to really focus on that kind of stuff like within the past 2 years, where a lot of when I would consume horror movies, it would just be very passive. Like I'm like not passive, but I would watch them and I really wouldn't take note of like, oh, this was the director, or like, you know, every once in a while I'd be like, oh, you know, he also directed this other thing, but I didn't really look into it as much as I do now. And so I feel like that is another thing that social media has really, I'm really grateful for, that I really try to do my research on stuff like that, when before it was kind of just like, oh, I'll pop this on and I don't really know who made it, or I'm not going to look into it further or anything. I'm trying to think, you know, when you get asked a question, you're like, I've never seen a movie in my life.
It'll come to you when you're like walking your dog and you'll be like, God damn it, that was the one.
I'm like, I should have said this. What about you? I'm curious.
So when the movie Saw came out, little indie film called Saw. Yeah. It changed everything for me. I remember the theater experience, and I remember that ending hit harder than my grandmother's chancleta. Like, it hit me so hard. And the entire theater, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because it just was such a powerful moment in movies in general. And I know it gets a lot of crap because it came out in a weird time where there was like the whole torture porn thing talk and all that. And you look back at Saw, that was not it. Saw was a crime thriller, okay, that had elements of horror in it, but it wasn't straight up horror. It just wasn't that much. And it was probably one of the least goriest movies out of the entire franchise. That movie like really defined what I started to really gravitate towards. And James Wan at that time, I was hooked. I was like, what is he going to do next, you know? And then he did Dead Silence, and I loved that movie. Just the whole mood of that film, you know, Mary Shaw, just creepy. He did Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, which was also a thriller but had horror elements again. And you know, it was it just was so damn good. And I was so excited to see what he would do next. And then, of course, Insidious 2, I loved both Insidious. And I think Insidious 2, like, made Insidious 1 that much better just because the two of them are really just one film. You know, geek out for a little bit, but whatever.
Yes.
And then he did what I consider to be the masterpiece, was The Conjuring. The first Conjuring. One of the things about James Wan that I loved was his subtlety to scares. He wasn't really a jump scare kind of guy. He did things so subtle that if you missed it as an audience member, you missed it.
Yeah.
And there were moments that happened in silence. For example, I think it was Insidious 2, when the wife is walking back from one end of the house to the other because the radio starts playing. Mm-hmm. And during that walk, the little boy is in the laundry room with his back towards the camera, just standing there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Just being
no
creepy.
jump scare, no
Yeah.
music, nothing.
Yeah.
It was just him. And you're like, oh my God. And again, goosebumps. James Wan had this effect on me that every time that I watched one of his movies and those types of scares would happen, I'd be consumed with goosebumps. And nobody ever did that for me. Like, nobody, not a single damn soul. And then he did The Conjuring 2, and he broke my heart.
Oh, I know.
The Conjuring 2 felt very studio, very hands-on, and that to me was the decline of James Wan as a horror director.
100%.
And then he did Fast and the Furious, and obviously that is just a studio movie that James Wan decided to put some of his visual like styles that he's done in other movies in. He did some James Wan-esque things in it. And I was like, oh man. And since then, honestly, I have not found anything of his to be really exciting. It's not really saying much. I feel like he's now just a big name for the industry. I would love to see him go back to something like that. With that being said, Lee Whannell, who was his writer, and also the star in Saw and other movies, Insidious and Death Sentence and all that. He is an incredible writer, and he's also an incredible director. Upgrade. Like, that movie, just for being an 80s kid, 80s fan, the aesthetic, the violence in that movie felt like a Paul Verhoeven film. Like, it just was brutal, and it wasn't glorified violence either. I don't like glorified violence. Like, if it's violence just because, I like that realism in violence where it's impactful and it's like ugly. Like David Cronenberg's History of Violence, for example. It's a drama, but then when the violence hits, it's like or like Drive. You ever see Drive with Ryan Gosling?
I've actually never seen it.
Okay.
Well, I know.
Thank you guys
like,
so much. Have a wonderful night. Don't follow her anywhere, guys. This is absurd.
Just block her, actually.
End this all. You need to watch it. You should watch it.
It's honestly, it's like my boyfriend's like Letterboxd top 4, and I love Ryan Gosling, and I don't know why I was just like,
really?
Nope, never gonna watch it, but I promise I will.
It's you have to be in a mood for it. It is a very artsy film.
Yes.
Okay, Nicholas Winding Refn is very much that. All of his movies do that. But Lee Whannell, again, he did that. Then he did The Invisible Man, which I thought was
I loved The Invisible Man.
Incredible, right? So very excited to see. However, there was this guy who did this movie called Hush. And the fact that you mentioned him, I'm not trying to copy you, but, I was whatever. Mike Flanagan, before Hush, he did a movie called Oculus, which a lot of people haven't seen. I don't understand how we haven't. Oculus was an absolute freaking banger. Okay.
I adore that movie.
Everything that this man has done has just, it's rich.
Yes.
It's character driven, which is what's missing in the horror genre. A lot of times you see a movie, it's very uneventful, it's very forgettable, and we think to ourselves, why is it so forgettable? It was fun. Okay, sure, I had some scares. It's because there's no time taken for any of these characters. They're just very one-dimensional. There's nothing to them. And Mike Flanagan has done something that I feel like hasn't been done in the genre for so long, which is to bring that back, to focus on characters first and the atmosphere and build these worlds that are just, you're just immersed in it. You forget what you're watching. And then when a scare happens, holy crap. And again, no director has ever done that James Wan effect where I get those goosebumps until Mike Flanagan came along. The Haunting of Hill House, that show...
Just a masterpiece.
I don't think there's nothing that's ever been that perfect. Like genuinely. And that one episode that everybody knows, that episode where, you know,
where we find out.
Yeah. And she's coming through the freaking floors.
Yes.
She jumps out of the seat. Like, that's a jump scare done right.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I love a good jump scare. Like, and yes, like there are times when it could be like annoying or loud or whatever, but Mike Flanagan has never done a cheap jump scare.
Yep.
They're always so well done. They're just so good.
I think he is the best working director in the genre today.
100%.
I'm like so excited when I heard that he is now going to be doing the new Exorcist. Just thinking about what he does and bringing it to such a franchise like that where it needs that, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Like, I didn't grow up on the original Exorcist. I saw it much later in life and I thought it was good. I didn't necessarily think it was like the greatest thing ever, but that's because for me it was a different time. I had already seen other movies that had already done that for me. Whereas most people saw The Exorcist and that's the one that did it for them, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's like I've already seen other possession movies and I'm big on foreign films. So being Hispanic, I watch a lot of Spanish films and not gonna lie, but Spanish people do possession movies the best. Like anything religious, like that's our thing. Jaume Balaguer is a great director from Spain. If you guys have never seen any of his movies, you need to check them out. A very famous one that he's done is called Rec 2, you know, Paco Plaza. Like these guys, they just, it's just incredible movies. Anyways, I'm going off topic. I'm doing it again. Gigi, you're gonna hate me. You're like, this is over.
I'm absolutely loving this.
She's like, I have Mike Flanagan on the phone. I gotta go.
I mean, I did interview him once, but that's
okay. That's well. Thank you guys for watching. To all my 5 subscribers, thank you.
I think it was like today, like a tweet or an article or something came out where he said that this is actually the scariest film that he's ever like created. I'm ready. Like, because I genuinely believe, I feel like he is a man of his word, and I believe that this is going to be truly scary.
I'm actually a little nervous about it too, though, because I've seen this with so many directors that I love. When they get to a point where they touch a movie that's very studio based. Yeah. And for me, I know that I've seen your videos on this particular film with Alien Romulus. Alien Romulus was my most anticipated movie of the year. Not because it's another Alien movie, but because of Fetty. Okay. I love Evil Dead 2013. I'm gonna brag now. I was at the Fangoria premiere in New York City, and I was with Jane Levy, and she signed my Fangoria magazine and my poster, and then we went to see the movie. Yeah, not to brag. Okay, I used to live in Jersey, and you know, whatever. Okay, I've been to a couple bars where some of the guys from Fangoria go and hang out.
Wait, that's actually really cool.
Yeah. Anyways, I get to name drop. Finally, yes.
You're like, I got one.
I love that movie. And then, you know, Don't Breathe. I mean, Jesus, the man wasn't missing. He wasn't missing. And I'm like, good. Oh, you guys are letting him do an alien movie? You're letting this man do his thing. I was so excited for it. So excited for it. To the point where I didn't actually watch any trailers. So just not have any like expectations. But I did because it was Fetty. And I love the first 35 minutes of that movie. I couldn't get enough of it. And then the synthetic, it just took me out of the movie. Yeah. It took me out so hard. And I couldn't get back into it. And I thought to myself, I was like, okay, maybe he's just in it for this moment and that's it. And no, he was in it for the rest. And it took me out. And it wasn't because of like anything fan service. I didn't care for any of that. Like, it is what it is. I get it. This is a studio film. But for them to like tell him to put this character in, because from what I read, he was never in the movie, in the original script. It wasn't until David Goyer and whoever the other writer was, or the producer was, said, you need to throw this character in there. And I'm genuinely curious as to what the movie would have been, because he is kind of the whole, he drives the whole second half. Aside from Mike Flanagan, the only other directors that I'm excited about to see what they come up with next, obviously Fetty, I would love to see him go back to something small that's more contained, that's not like some big studio movie. But the Raka Raka, which, you know, Danny and Philip, the Australian directors who did Talk to Me. Yes. Talk to Me was my favorite horror film of last year. Same. I've been a fan of theirs since their YouTube days. I was always a fan of their crazy gore. I've respected the fact that they never once monetized their channel so that they could always post the stuff they wanted to post without fear of it getting taken down or anything like that. That's huge.
That's so bad. I actually didn't know that. Like I know that they're the people behind Talk to Me, but I never was like, I didn't watch their channel or anything. So when it was like, oh, two YouTubers are making a horror movie, you know, I read up on it, but I didn't really know anything about them. So I had no idea about the whole monetization thing. I still haven't really watched anything from them. But I am so excited for what's the new one?
I don't know the name of the new one. They did announce it. I can't remember it off the top of my head. They are doing Talk to Me too, which I'm excited for. That's somebody that I think everybody should be looking out for. These two guys are, I'm very excited to see what they do.
Going back to James Wan, he is directing a book that I really, really love and I am excited for because I feel the same way that you do. Like I loved Saw, and kind of like a two-part, because I loved Saw, because I forgot to answer the other half of your question where it was like what movies kind of were like, oh, changed the game. Saw was definitely one of them. I remember watching that and being like, holy shit, this is like a whole new genre of horror, right? Because it was, you know, crime thriller, but then now we had like these horror elements. It totally opened the door for these like, you know, puzzles and like, you know, where it's almost like a genre mashup. And I just obsessed. I love Saw so much. James Wan was just absolutely incredible. And then he just freaking fell off. And I was like, what is this guy doing? But he is directing. I think he's directing or producing. I can't remember. No, I think he's the director for a book called The Troop, which is one of my all-time favorite horror books. And it's very like creature based. It's like kind of like an eco horror / like body horror type of a thing. So I am excited to see what that'll bring, because it's such a well-loved book and it has like source material. So I'm like, okay, James, you better not fuck this up, because you have something to go off of here that so many people love. And I'm curious about that one.
I've never heard of the book. I would say, just based off the description, I wish they would have given it to Guillermo del Toro, because yes, I am going to be skeptical and say that James Wan is just going to go heavy CGI on the monsters and creatures or whatever it is and totally ruin it. Yeah. And the CGI that he approves as a director, my guy needs glasses. He needs glasses or a friend to sit next to him and be like, it's not good, dude. It's just not good.
Sometimes like sometimes I wonder, I literally had this conversation with somebody where I'm like, I wonder what it's like for the people in the movies, because obviously they're not the ones like in the editing room and everything like that. So when they finally get to see the movie and they're like, why the fuck did you guys put this in there? Like, you know, that's so fair. I wish it was Guillermo, because it's like, he is more of that like creature type of person, or even like Fede. It like, because the movie has to do with like worms, like these like weird, like, you know, parasites. They would be so good with these like monsters, practical effects, even if it was like CGI, just something that's good, you know. But yeah, so we'll see how that one turns out.
Well, I hope for your sake it turns out to be one of the best, and then, you know, you'll make an awesome review on it, because I don't ever want to see a movie fail. That's like,
yeah, exactly,
the one thing I always hope that it's great, because that's something else that I can spend money on and go broke on, have in my back forever. So back to the question, is actually the last question. So, you know, you as a creator, influencer, however you want to phrase it, like, I genuinely look up to you. Like, I honestly, I find your content to be so refreshing. I love the fact that you are just really great at speaking. It's so refreshing to see that in this space, because not for nothing, but not everybody's built for it. Okay. and you know, you just have a presence to you. It's great to see. You are not just talking out of your ass. You know what you're talking about. And if you are talking out of your ass, you do a really good job at faking.
Thank you. Sometimes I do.
So there's that too. But with that being said, for anybody that's watching this or listening to it and wants to break into the content creation, especially in the horror space like yourself, what would your biggest piece of advice be for somebody to get started and to stand out?
Honestly, I feel like everybody always gives this advice, but it's so true, is you just have to do it. Like, just if you want to post videos, don't wait for, oh, I'm waiting for a certain camera, or I'm waiting for a microphone, or I'm waiting for a backdrop. It's like, really, at the heart of it, that doesn't matter. Like, if you want to post content, just open your phone up, take a video, watch other people. I guess my advice would be watch the content that you look up to, and see what works for other people, and don't copy and paste, because nobody wants to see the same exact content creator over and over again. But see what they do that's successful and that you like, and just take little pieces from that and little tips and tricks from that, and just post, because you're never going to go anywhere if you're not going to get started. I was like that for the longest time. I would sit on like video ideas, and I'd be like, oh, well, I'll do it when I have like my background set up, or, I'll do it when this microphone comes in, or when I get a new phone so the camera is nicer. And it's just, or like when I have like more followers. But it's like, what does that matter? Like, you're not going to get it if you don't put it out there. I mean, same thing with YouTube. Like, I was like, oh, well, maybe if I have, certain topics or this and that, then I'll start making videos, or once I learn how to do like this editing, app. But it's like, once you start, you just kind of learn as you go. You'd be surprised with how receptive people are to the video that even you thought that you shouldn't put out. So many times, I almost didn't put out the video that I did on YouTube that hit like the 15,000, my second video. I almost didn't post that because I was like, I hate it. I was like, I hate the way that I look. I hate the way that I sound. I don't think I edited it right. I was like, oh my God, I hate this. And I was like, oh, whatever. I was like, I already spent hours recording, hours editing. I'm just going to freaking post this stupid thing and have it flop. And it's what got my channel off the ground. So just post.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me. Jesus, it's been an hour.
Yes.
I'm so sorry I kept you for this long.
No, it zoomed by. I had so much fun.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. And honestly, just you are a breath of fresh air within this community, and just everything you're doing. I applaud you. Thank you again, Gigi.
Thank you.
Anything you want to plug in? Emails or phone calls you're having with like really famous people you can talk about?
Really nothing to plug other than one of my biggest goals in the upcoming just weeks, years, months is to really get our podcast off the ground, Dark Screen Society. I started it with my good friends like Chuck, Brian, and Seth, and we've been having so much fun with it. And we have had our independent success, individual success with our own like channels and everything, but we want to go so far with our podcast. We think we have something special, and so that's just the main thing that I would plug. I love it. I'm biased. I think we're funny. And so yeah, that's the biggest thing right now. We're going to Fantastic Fest in a couple of weeks, which is like, I'm honestly kind of nervous about, because it's like an 8-day film festival and you watch like 5 or 6 movies a day. And I'm like, I literally think my brain is going to just melt. But I get to meet so many like creators that I've never met before that I'm really excited to meet, where we get to finally meet up as like a podcast in person. Brian lives in Scotland, so he's flying all the way out from Scotland. So I feel like it'll be a really pivotal, big moment for us, and just, individually too, and just the people that I get to meet and hopefully interview. So yeah, I'm just excited for what the future holds.
That sounds like heaven. You've just described heaven for me. So that's amazing. Congrats to you guys. Thank you, Gigi. You're the best. This was so great.
No, thank you. I had so much freaking fun. Thank you so much. I would love to be back on whenever you want. I like this little like conversational setup. This is a good feeling.
What was going through your brain when you were interviewing Mike Flanagan?
Okay, so really funny is that I was so nervous. Like, I was shaking. I wanted to throw up. I should like post the video that I recorded before. Like, I was like, I'm going to interview Mike Flanagan. I'm going to interview Mike Flanagan. Like, I was just like, I can't believe it. And it was my first interview ever, like as Room for Script. I had never done anything like that before. It just kind of like landed in my lap. And him and his wife, Kate Siegel, were there. And so I got to interview them both. And I was like, oh, I get to meet like my icon, Mike Flanagan. But actually, it was so easy to talk to him. And when I talked to his wife, I like blacked out. She is absolutely stunning. She just was like this beaming light of gorgeousness, and I just like blacked out. I don't even remember what I asked her or anything. And so it's so funny that like when people are like, what was it like? And I was like, Mike was the easy one. It was Kate that she is just a surprising that you get so starstruck by her. So yeah, but it was just absolutely incredible.
Is the interview posted anywhere that like we can watch it?
Yeah, oh, yeah, the interview is on TikTok. I actually think I have like a little like a playlist for interviews. It's like 2 interviews I've done. But it's on there.